All right, let's talk about a story that is just incredible in its scale. It starts with a huge environmental crisis, but believe me, it ends with a surprising wave of innovation and, you guessed it, opportunity. Today, we are diving deep into India's plastic revolution.
Okay, I want you to start with just this one number 26,000.
Yeah, that's how many tons of plastic waste India creates every single day. I mean, that's a number so big, it's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. But this is where the whole story pivots, because innovators and investors are now looking at this mountain of waste, and they're seeing something totally different. They're not just seeing a problem, they're seeing the raw material for a whole new circular economy. And look, we're not talking about some small, niche, feel-good project here. This is a potential $10 billion opportunity. So let's take a look at what's really driving this. So what's lighting the fire under this whole thing? Well, it's kind of like a perfect storm of four big drivers. First up, you've got explosive market growth. We're talking a jump to over $10 billion by 2030. Then there's a major push from policy. The government has something called Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, which basically makes companies legally responsible for recycling the packaging they create. Third, you've got massive corporate demand. Think about it. Huge companies like Coca-Cola and Amazon, they need recycled materials to hit their own climate goals. And finally, the technology to actually make all of this happen, it's here, it's ready, and it's ready to scale. So with that perfect storm brewing, a whole wave of startups are jumping in, and they're basically following four main playbooks. Let's break them down. All right, path number one. This is really the bedrock for everything else. Because you can't recycle what you can't get your hands on, right? It all starts with collecting and sorting this stuff efficiently. Now, this isn't just about grabbing more trash bags. It's about revolutionizing the entire system from the ground up. What these startups are doing is brilliant. They're taking India's huge informal network of waste collectors and bringing them into the digital age. They're using tech to create transparent, traceable supply chains. So for the first time ever, big brands can actually track their plastic from the consumer all the way back to the factory. This proves they're hitting those government targets and, more importantly, it secures them a steady stream of high-quality material. And a perfect example of this in action, a company called Recircle. Think about it like this. They've basically built an Uber for scrap. It's a tech platform that connects everyone in the chain, from the individual person collecting waste to the giant recycling facility, adding transparency and value every step of the way. So once you have that clean, reliable stream of plastic coming in, that's where path number two kicks in, creating some real value. Now that you have good, sorted plastic, you can do some pretty amazing things with it. And this represents a massive shift in thinking. For decades, recycling really meant downcycling. You know the drill. An old water bottle becomes a park bench or some synthetic fiber, lower value than what it started as. But the new approach? This is true recycling. That same old bottle becomes a brand new food-grade bottle, worth just as much as one made from virgin plastic. And just look at the economics. It's a total game changer. Profit margins jump from maybe 5 to 8% to over 20%. The poster child for this approach? Rich Chakra Polyplast. These guys are the real deal. They are taking old, used bottles and turning them back into pristine, food-grade material for giants like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. This is what the circular economy actually looks like. Okay, but what about all that tricky plastic? The flimsy wrappers, the multi-layered chip bags, the stuff that just gums up the works for normal recycling? Well, that leads us to a really cool technological frontier. This is where chemical recycling comes in. And honestly, the best way to think about it is with Legos. So imagine mechanical recycling is like melting down a Lego castle into one big clunky brick. Useful, but not what it was. Chemical recycling, that's like taking that castle apart, piece by perfect piece, so you have all the original pristine bricks back, ready to build something totally new. It's taking complex plastics all the way back to their core molecular ingredients to create brand new virgin quality materials. And you've got pioneers like Polycycle leading the way on this. They've got a patented process that can take a messy mix of hard-to-recycle plastic and turn it into the raw oils needed to make a new plastic. It's an absolute game changer for all that waste that would normally just end up in a landfill. So we've talked about collecting plastic and recycling it, but the fourth path asks a totally different question. What if we just didn't need the plastic in the first place? This is the whole world of low-carbon alternatives. We're talking about using things like bamboo, seaweed, even leftover agricultural waste to make packaging. And that 2022 ban on certain single-use plastics in India, man, that was like pouring gasoline on the fire for this sector. But here's the catch, the real challenge. For any of these alternatives to truly take off, they have to match the price and the performance of good old-fashioned plastic. And that is the code that a company like Bamboo has totally cracked. They're making bamboo-based packaging that can actually compete with plastic on price. And when you do that, you get the big players interested, which is exactly why brands like Amazon are already on board. So we've got these 4 really compelling business models. But you know what they say? Follow the money. Are investors actually buying into this revolution? Let's take a look.
So this chart gives us a great snapshot of the startup scene. You can see the foundation, collection, and mechanical recycling is still a huge chunk of the pie. But look at this. A ton of energy, a ton of new companies are popping up in those newer spaces, plastic alternatives and chemical recycling. That tells you the ecosystem is both getting stronger and pushing the boundaries at the same time. And this chart, this tells us an even more interesting story about timing. Look at that. A whopping 60% of all the investment deals are tiny, under $1 million. That's seed money. That tells you this whole revolution is still in its early days. It's not a mature market, it's just getting warmed up, which means the potential for future growth is, well, it's huge. So let's tie this all together. What does this all mean for the future of waste? You know, this quote from the report we've been looking at just nails it. India has this gigantic plastic problem, right? But that exact problem is creating this equally gigantic, wide-open field for innovation, for investment, and for growth. They're really just at the starting line of this journey. So in the end, India is figuring out how to turn trash into treasure, literally. They're building real, profitable businesses from stuff we used to just throw away. And that leaves us with this one big, fascinating question to think about. As these homegrown solutions get better and bigger, could they actually become the blueprint for how the rest of the world finally deals with its own plastic problem? We'll have to wait and see.